Okay, so this is our setup. I'll move things out of the way a little bit. Okay, this is the wafer paper right here. It is very flexible, but it's pretty fragile, especially if you're in a really dry area. It can just, you fold it, crimp it, it just crumbles. So make sure that you're somewhat careful when you're working with your wafer paper. In the CakeFu class about wafer paper flowers, she uses a lot of colored wafer paper, and there are places where you can actually go on and purchase colored wafer paper. I think actually through the CakeFu, but or you can use a printer, a food coloring printer to do your wafer paper that way. But I airbrushed mine. So I thought that it would be a good thing to show and explain that you can actually airbrush the wafer paper so that it looks, so that it's colored. And I'm going to actually go ahead and airbrush just a little bit so that you guys can see what the wafer paper does when you airbrush it, because wafer paper doesn't like moisture all that much. So you really don't want to get too much of the color on there. Make sure that you, when you're airbrushing, you kind of do a test spray so that you're not, getting a blob of stuff on your wafer paper. This is where an airbrush that has a tilting cup really comes in handy. Or you can find a way to prop up your wafer paper and airbrush it straight on. But I like to leave it just straight down, and you're just going to kind of go back and forth, and you just kind of overlap layers as you go up. And this is actually a really good way for you guys to practice airbrushing. When I took a class from Lisa Brazell, she has a CakeFu class also. But if you take a CakeFu class from Lisa Brazell, this is one of the first things she teaches. I took a class from her in person, and this was one of the first things that she focused on, was getting a good overall even spray and fill in, basically. So it's just coming in, spraying one line, and then overlapping that spray, and then overlapping that spray, so that you get a nice even all the way up. And the thing about this is, like I said, it's a good way to practice that, because it doesn't have to be perfect. If you have some spots in here, I don't know if you can see really that closely, but if you can see, there are some spots in here that are lighter and some spots in here that are darker. That first original line I did was pretty dark, and then I lightened it up. But that really doesn't matter with this. So just know that it's not a big deal. Okay, so we have some of that color. So that's just coloring your wafer paper with an airbrush. When you do this, again, make sure you don't get too much of the airbrush color on there. It would be kind of hard to make it to the point where it would melt, kind of a thing. You'd have to spray on quite a bit. But a really nice small coat, you can come back in and do another layer, another coat, if you want a darker color. And yeah, then you can, just go that way, work your way up. And one thing that you do have to be aware of is when you airbrush, turn that off. When you airbrush your wafer paper, that it is a little bit more fragile after it's done. I think it has something to do with the alcohol that's in the airbrush colors, that it actually dries out the wafer paper a little bit more. So you have to be a little bit more careful once you've airbrushed, because it does get a little bit less flexible, but it it's still workable. It's just fine. And I believe that the same thing would happen with printing wafer paper. People are asking where I got this wafer paper. This is from Chef Rubber. I got a big, giant kit of it. I actually got 2 of them because I did some wafer paper leaves for a cake that I did. It was a really fun cake. You guys should go see it. It was a family reunion, big anniversary, 200th anniversary of my ancestor who came across to America, kind of a thing. So anyway, we did a big family tree, and it has tons of wafer paper leaves on it. And I bought this giant, 2 giant packages of this. I mean, the stack was about this high. And I thought I was going to use most of it doing these wafer paper leaves. And honestly, it goes so far and lasts so long. I haven't opened the second one, and I'm not even halfway through the first package. They really go a long way. So keep that in mind when you're buying your wafer paper, because I bought seriously like $200 worth of wafer paper thinking that I was going to use all of it, not even a fourth of it. So yeah. Okay, so we've got our wafer paper colored. I'm actually not going to show you the peony, the pink one that is on the cake, because we don't have time. But I wanted to show you guys how to color it. So I'm going to move this now so you guys can see a little better. All right, so now we're going to pull up our white peony stuff. And I'm doing this a little bit differently than the CakeFu class teaches. I kind of, changed it up and did a few things my own way. Oh, that's showing a glare from the screen. Maybe I should keep that there. Sorry. That's distracting. Okay, better. All right. So, okay. So we have our wafer paper petals here. I just, what I had started out with was the idea of my actual peony cutter that I have for my gum paste flowers. And I was going to just make a template out of that. But then I decided that it was a little too jagged and not, what's the word? As rounded as I wanted it to be. And so I kind of just created my own. And I mean, you can create your own too. It's really easy. But I think I will throw up a PDF file with these little templates on them so you guys can have them if you want. But this is the largest one, which is what we're going to use for the white open peony. So what you do is you cut out 10 of them. And then you are going to take some piping gel, and we're going to paint with piping gel over all of the whole thing. So there's really, yeah. I gotta pull out a towel. Sorry. I don't want to get this all over the table. Okay, so we'll do it on a paper towel. Oh, that's really hard to see. Okay, so just dip in the piping gel, really light coat, just go over the whole thing. And you want to get a nice, good coat. I didn't pick the best brush for this. The best brush would be one that's a little bit more stiff. Mine's a little bit soft. But a nice thin coat. You want to get enough on there that it's coated all the way, but not so much that it's going to take forever to dry. Oh, and I forgot to tell you guys, there is a front side and a back side to the wafer paper. Depending on the texture that you want your flower to be, there's a more rough side, and then there's a more smooth side. And I'm painting, or the rough side is what I'm using for the back side, and that's the side that I'm painting with the with the piping gel. Sometimes I lose my words, they run away from me. Okay, so we're gonna paint all of those. I'm gonna line these all up really fast and paint them all so that it's easier. All right. Okay, and it takes just a minute for it to kind of set to the point where it's just tacky. Um, with this flour, you don't want to work with it when it's really wet. You want it to just be kind of tacky. I would have done these ahead of time, but I didn't see it working out with the digital stuff, so we'll hurry. Okay. Let's see, what else? Oh, I forgot to tell you, you should cut a slit up the middle of these flowers. And I didn't do that. But we can still do it. It's okay. Just, it takes scissors, that's all. And that's how I cut my wafer paper, is with scissors. That's the best way to do it. I'm sure that there are, I don't know, there are punches out there that you can use, but it's hard to find a punch that's the exact shape that you want it to be, unless you want it to be just like a rose petal, you know, kind of a teardrop shape. You can find cutters for that. Or if you want it to be like an oval shape for something. I used an oval shaped cutter for my leaves that I did back in the day, but just scissors. And I drew out a template. I'll show you how to do that now because we want this to set up just a little bit. But I drew out a template and then just cut around it. And then I just took my wafer paper, sized it up, and then cut around it. And then I just cut a bunch of other ones, you know, off of that. And that's how I cut it. So nothing really fancy, but you should actually take your scissors and cut a slit partway up the thing, and I'll have to do that while they're tacky. It's going to be fun. And then in the meantime, you're going to actually roll out a round piece of fondant. It's just about eighth to a quarter inch thick, and it's just a round. I used a little, one of my old Wilton flower cutters that I had from way back in the day, just a round one, and I'm going to set that on, I'm going to set it on the plastic right there. So that's how I'm going to adhere all of my petals to here.